Welcome to the Infinity Loop Group. I'm Riley.
Oh, I'm Kristen. I didn't hear Burns this time.
Yeah.
I thought,
Discernment, Part 3. You have the gift of a brilliant internal guardian that stands ready to warn you of hazards and guide you through risky situations. Gavin de Becker.
Waking up is a fascinating process. From one day to the next, we see things differently. One day, everything is fun and light. The next day, we see how we've enabled someone and gotten in the way of their growth. I'm not sure how that all ties into discernment. I guess it's all discernment. But the thought is about how we continually gain insight as we grow. We're extremely complex human beings. I cringe at any counsel that tries to fit our human experience into a little box. Quote unquote, you did that because we do things for a myriad of reasons. I would call that spiritual abuse, Riley, when therapists, coaches, people that are parental, anyone tries to tell you, you did this because.
Right, so they're psychoanalyzing you, and it's one thing to go, you might have done it because of this, because, that's where their teachings have brought them to. Mm-hmm. But to state it as an absolute kind of goes back to the thing, to me, of the very beginning of putting shame on places that maybe shouldn't be, right? Where someone is, now you're putting shame on someone that isn't even their shame. You know what you're talking about at the very, more of the beginning of the book with how I think that's my biggest issue with therapists is I find that people, a lot of the conversation goes from no longer taking responsibility, but finding someone else to put the shame on.
Tell me, what do you mean?
Well, you did that because your mother did this to you while you're a child. So now you're no longer responsible for your actions. You now are blaming your mother and putting the shame on her instead, when it's might not even be about that to begin with. And we are no longer looking inward as our own process, but looking for somewhere else to put the
Well,
bad
I'm also
behavior.
thinking about how you did that because that was your ego. And that's why I remember this therapist, oh my God, she had been in a cult. And she was going, you just need to admit that you were in that cult because of your ego. Because you wanted to be more special than everybody else. And you know what? That was one aspect of why I was in that cult, of whatever part.
So you're saying there might be some truth in that there might be some ego of wanting to, I think that's...
It is the ego. It is the specialness of any time we get into, they say this about the keto cult. They call it that, the carnivore cult, the vegan cult, where it's like, we're on the right side of all things nutrition and saving the world. Like where the ego sneaks in our dogmatic view or thinking you are special.
It's as soon as you think you've gotten to the top of the mountain in any facet, that's when our ego is the most active. Is that what you're kind of getting at?
The evangelical belief that you are the because you believe exactly this, you are the ones that are going to heaven. And everybody else is going to spend eternity in hell. And you go, where do we not question where the ego might be playing in to that religious view? But that belief of why we do anything, or, you're just in your patterns again. It's like, no. And that's where I would say I really honor the value of the Infinity Loop and the way we coach is we do not God, I hope we don't do that to people. Like to go, oh, well, what do you think? What resonates with you of why you're doing that? Or do you think it's this? And what else do you, because of the complex, it's the honoring somebody's soul and the complexities, and that we are not supposed to get tripped up by our own expertise of what we just heard and read and following someone else. We are supposed to be so open to the field of discovering what's new.
So would you say how the infinity loop would be used more appropriately would be like your ego might be what caused you to do that, but what else caused you to join? Like, right? That would be how you would frame it as a coach.
She was just using her. It was
right.
That's
I'm saying if
beautiful.
you were in her position and you were trying to help your younger self, right? If you were the therapist, how you would? I'm asking. You were saying
I would ask it first as a question: is how do you think being in the cult, Krista, appealed to your ego?
Okay.
What was it meeting as an ego need of? And then I was in a cult. She was in a cult, and I go, what I noticed about myself is that it was meeting a certain ego need to be special and to be in this like higher level kind of thing. And does that resonate with you? Right. And then let's explore the different reasons why and where you were abandoning yourself of thinking you needed all these other things. I mean, it's just the paradigm that they're under, but we can never say you're doing this because of this for one thing. It's not seeing in the whole seeing. And that's what we're trying to move into, is that contemplative view that doesn't just look upon someone with a judgment, but it sees the whole picture.
Always going for the bigger picture.
It's the bigger picture of the nuances, the good, the bad, the ugly, the shadow, the this, the beautiful, the compassion, the wound. That was coming from their trauma. It's like holding that space. So I guess I'm glad I kind of pushed on that pedal with this point. I wrote a few pages ago how I've shut down my discernment my entire life because it interfered with thinking the best of people. But this morning, I realized Krista's shaming voice didn't originate from her. I just repeated what I've heard my entire life. The truth is, I wasn't allowed to have my discernment, and I was shamed for it. I think my lifelong struggle has been that I'm too sensitive. I'm a damn empath, and I would think I think I am a damn empath. And I'm not allowed to have my discernment and my boundaries. That all falls under discernment. And I think that's, I am extremely in the feminine. And I think that's part of that shadow of they don't want, people who go, oh, I just love it. But they don't want the boundaries. They don't want the disturbing questions. They don't want to be questioned. That's not allowed because that's not just going, with the narrative that's happening to keep the peace.
Well, to me, hearing about like being an empath and having empathy, I find that you have empathy for people when you're willing to communicate your healthy boundaries, because you go, okay, you're difficult to deal with. I still want to deal with you and be there for you, but these are going to be the boundaries that you're willing to engage with me for. And to me, that's doing the extra work and understanding that we are having empathy, not trying to shut down their experience.
Yeah. And I think that the abuse message of when our boundaries have been so broken down, it takes an enormous amount of work to get those boundaries back up, because of how do you speak with skill? How do you love well by practicing elegant and intelligent self-care and not abandon yourself? And when you have an open heart and you really need to be skillful with honoring the messages of your anger of, ooh, something isn't right. Not that we live in that anger, but ooh, that wasn't okay. And that when boundaries, we do need to be speaking up more and being very careful of who we have in our lives, right? And where we put our empathy. I mean, really, who we walk with in this life.
It comes from.
Yeah, it comes in the form of being bullied or being the recipient of elders' advice that has outlived the evolution of growing consciousness, i.e., staying in relationships that are insane, keeping in contact with parents who want to crush you. Forgiveness means protecting an abuser and letting them deceive others. If we've been shamed, blamed, and told all that's wrong with you, if you've been shamed, blamed, and told all that's wrong with you and how bad you are on a continuous basis, it's a monumental feat to stand in your discernment and be able to say, no, it's not me, it's you. My parents divorced when I was 8. I immediately got a stepfather figure in my life. He was 14 years younger than my mother and 14 years older than me. In the 3rd grade, I remember standing in my school cafeteria reading a card he wrote to me. On the envelope, he called me a wild woman. He didn't mean it the way Dr. Estes writes of a wild woman who runs with the wolves. I've had this mane for a long time. I knew based on all that had gone on and all that I sensed that once I opened the card, I was going to feel sick in the pit of my stomach. When I read it, everything went into slow motion. I was as solid in knowing the truth as the linoleum I stood on. I said to myself, my childhood is over. My life became learning how to leave my body, how to pretend, how to keep secrets. When I turned 14, the many elaborate love letters from him would come. I was reading that and I go, I think they came before that. But they were like daily at that point. On my pillow, on the lid of the toilet, he told me he fantasized about making love to me and wanted to leave my mother for me. It was a trauma that set a course for my life. I tried to tell myself he didn't mean it the way he said it. I had the courage one day to show it to my friends who were completely freaked out. The dozens of other letters he wrote, my mother found and took them. She said she read them and would take care of it. I've been blamed throughout the years for it all. I was the seductress all the years he was in my life. She said I was the problem, and she was going to send me off to a boarding school, but wouldn't allow me to move back to California to live with my father. Then one letter I showed to my friends was used by my father to get custody. I had to escape and leave everything I owned behind because my mother said she was going to have the police at the airports. She always thought she owned me. For the next 35 years, I would escape again and again from situations and leave everything behind in my life. I didn't get my mother and stepfather out of my life. I went back. I was told by a few of my elders, quote unquote, she's your mother. When I turned 18, I joined a cult. The leader either hit me or beat me regularly in her insane rages for one of the 2 years I was with her. It was actually every single day. When she started hitting me, there wasn't a day that she didn't. It wasn't like I was truly beaten. The fact that I'm okay is really people might question if I'm okay. After the first year, I escaped this woman. She promised me she would stop. And so after only one day, I returned to my abuser. I always went back to my abusers. The physical violence did stop, but the spiritual, emotional, intellectual, and psychological abuse only intensified that second year I was in the cult. I went back to things throughout my life and pretended to reconcile what was irreconcilable, all in the name of love, forgiveness, healing, family, spirituality, God. I believed the best of people with no connection to discernment or reality. My wounds, shame, and estrangement from myself caused my standards to be frightfully low. I went back again to my mother and stepfather after the cult when I wanted a family so badly. I spent thousands on therapists, and no one told me I should get them out of my life. Although friends were shocked throughout the years I had them in my life. I told people I was fine now. I let them have access to my children. I never thought my stepfather would touch my children, and I was told by them that they have never had anything like that happen to them. We talked a lot about sexual abuse in our home. Both my kids know how to protect themselves in a lot of ways. And I should never have subjected them to you for a lot of different reasons. Having my mother and my stepfather in my life in some ways cost me everything. I had to abandon myself and deaden my discernment to be around my mother and stepfather. I felt it every single time, Riley. It was just so much of my life, just about deadening myself, of like, Krista, for the good of everybody, to just deaden what you feel inside. And it wasn't because I had unresolved pain, and that's the only reason. I had gotten in therapy when you were 6 months old. So, I was working my ass off on this stuff. So it wasn't like, if you had just forgiven him and done the work, you would have been fine. No, I was doing the work.
And just because you forgive someone doesn't mean you should invite them back into your life.
Yeah, because I did forgive him. It wasn't like I had any bitter, like I had forgiven. I truly had. But they alienated my children from me. Having my mother and my stepfather in my life in some ways cost me everything. I had to abandon myself and deaden my discernment to be around my mother and stepfather. I wanted a family and a mother who loved me. I didn't know how to be my own mother. They came against me in a custody battle because I waited 20 years to listen to my discernment and get them out of my life. When I set that boundary, they would do all they could in the name of love and concern to destroy me. I let them back in one last time. I got sucked in. That one cost me dearly. After 35 plus years relationship, my mother and stepfather parted ways. His lies and lust continue. I hold it all with reverence and love, like love holds it. It's interesting. I was looking at, with a relative, his profile on social media, and it's a completely made up, sociopathic. It's just, oh my God, it's just laughable. It's just a complete fake.
Yeah, he forged my signature to steal $50,000 from me, and tried to reach out to support his LinkedIn account and like validate something he did as a job. And I was just I pretty much just told him, I was like, I won't talk to you till you pay me back. And it was just...
My story is a taste of all the ways and reasons we ignore our discernment. May the lessons in this book help you reconnect with your guidance system if there's been any damage along the way. To show up for our lives in the most courageous way, which is, you will hear me say that a lot, to show up for our lives in the most courageous way. That is what this journey is about. That is what the Infinity Loop is about. This is what this podcast is about, is where do we need to step up in courage to show up for our lives in the most courageous way, is about that monumental feat to stand in our discernment and be able to say, no, it's not me, it's you.
Well, and
there's a place for that.
The courage is truly what changes the world, right? Because courage is not being afraid, but being afraid and still standing for what's right and speaking the truth and defending yourself and others, from the truth.
And I would say, even going further than that, and I know that's something Jordan Peterson talks about a lot, like, oh, you feel afraid and you're doing it anyway, is that like Andrew Harvey, is so great as a spiritual teacher, but he goes, actually, when you are just so nurturing yourself and learning to live in the true self and letting the false self die, you get so much more comfortable where you pass through the fear to the fearless self. And I know that feeling, man. It's like you step up and when you do the courage, it's like you may go, I feel it, but then you go through it and you are untouched. You can go, I fear everything I need will be provided for, and I fear nothing. And then I know that feeling that goes, I fear nothing. And I'm in my fearless self. So you could go, oh, courage is still standing. But then all of a sudden you just, you go through the veil and you are in your infinite self. And in there, you're like, I'm not even aware of where fear would hit, right? It is. So I would argue there's a deeper level you can go through. It's like the invitation and it's the wooing. It's going, come on, you can go there. The more we disidentify with our form, with our reputation, with this self, with our accomplishments, and find the infinite space. And Deepak Chopra, again, is so good. I sent you that thing about, it's like, no, we are an infinite self. We can live more in that fearless state.
I was thinking about like public speaking and how that you'll get that feeling before, at least for myself. But once I'm finally up there and doing it, there's nothing I'm afraid of because I've done the work, because I know what I'm talking about. And to me, that was kind of what the fear, when you were talking about going through to the fearless, that's what kept coming up. And to me, I think that fearless state comes from just being in the present so much, right? Because the fear is worrying about the future of what could happen, or because something in the past has happened, that could happen again. But when you're in the present, you can't really have that fear, and you're really breaking through to that fearless self. At least that's really how that lesson was resonating with me.
That's
of just
great.
Like,
yeah, and it's the energy can just be conceded as excitement and alertness, but it's going from, because one of the things I help people with in their career coaching is sometimes they struggle with speaking up, or they being on meetings, and it's going from self-consciousness to consciousness.
Super smart people can overanalyze situations that hinder them from being able to speak their true self, right? Because you're so smart, you're trying to look at so many different angles, and then because you've looked at all the angles, now you're unwilling to speak your truth, knowing that there's some natural knowledge inside of you that might be superior to your
right.
analysis
you're
of the situation.
And then it gets lost in the self-consciousness. It's the eyes are on the self, and that's always going to be insecure. The small self is always going to be, insecure on some level. It's knowing that comes from the silence deep within us. It's willing to stand in it no matter the cost. It's laying down our lives for the truth. It's living so open and free that it doesn't cling to the outcome or the cost. Hence, it's laying down our lives as we know it and control it. It wants truth, and we do it from a place of peace. Like I was telling you, I have never felt more peace in my entire life, and that is a guidance for us. We may feel anger, which is what needs to be honored and protected, right? Not this flailing around, not this ego-driven, but more this alertness of, ooh, what little boundary, what needs my attention? What's not okay and needs to be adjusted? We let that anger drop deep into our bellies like a cannonball where it will serve us. We don't need it to get diffuse where we can't think, all through our body, can't think clearly. From there, we take action. We know our true selves abundantly supply us with all the presence we need to take our stand. It contains the presence of the whole world. You may have had your discernment shut down by others and have internalized those voices at your own. Have great compassion for yourself, for others who have had that experience, and even for those who have shut it down. We all do what we do until we don't. Maybe this is about how to find what our lifelong struggles and themes have been and what can shift for us in a transformational way. The interior journey is the most exciting life there is. And that's something has helped people as they age to realize now, as our energy goes and you're realizing, you have a limited amount of years left to live and going, yeah, but if you go to more of the interior life, life is not any less exciting. I find it the most exciting life there is this interior life. We face our wounds and traumas and the untruths that have held us back from letting life express itself through us, because the truth really does set us free. No matter what messages we've received in life, we have compassion for ourselves and know we're precious in our humanity. We give the love and be the love we are and walk in our discernment, our sensitivities, and boundaries. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "All the mistakes I make arise from forsaking my own station and trying to see the object from another's point of view." That's interesting. We should unpack that. It's a necessary skill to suspend our point of view to hear another, but we lose our way when we abandon ourselves. Today, I honor my sensitivities, my discernment, and the necessary loving boundaries that protect the precious gift of life. And yeah, do you want to say something about that?
Well, I think we're probably about to say the same thing of just understanding that balance, because some people might be able to see more of the situation than you, and it's good to trust others. Like, I think that's, but at the same, it's where not neglecting your own perspective, but being open to other people's perspective, especially if the other people's perspective have your best interest at heart. And I think that's finding that fine line of, is someone's perspective their projection, or is someone's perspective their understanding and compassion for your situation and just trying to provide a larger picture?
Yeah. I'm going to say something, and I don't care how this sounds. I think I was smarter than every one of my therapists, and I frickin' figured it out. And I would submit, and I would just like go. I mean, I remember just like going, "Oh my God, what a dumb shit." I don't care what review, what schooling they have. I'm just like going, "Oh my God, they do not know what they're talking about. Oh my God, they're out of their depth. They're over their skis here." And I think because where my intelligence lies and stuff, like, I can see the complexity of things and what I would call, maybe my spiritual intelligences or my thinking processes. And that would be something where it's like I would abandon, or things in the church, all the times in the church or doctors, and you're submitting, you're abandoning your own gifts that God gave you to protect you and be your unique self, soul self. And that's what he's talking about. When he's made a mistake, when he's abandoned his deepest truth.
Well, I guess the question I think about is the statement of, no one will lie to you more than yourself. So how do you walk that line of, am I lying to myself? Or is this true, full discernment from my higher self? You actually, I think you do know it. That's the thing, is when you step into that, like, there's a certain purity of knowing. And even if you are a mistake, you can only be where you are. You can only be where you are. So being false, see, that's what it is. So it's better to make your own mistake than someone else's mistake, right?
Okay, this is so good. Had I spoken up, this is where my ego got involved, that I actually cared what this person said, because I remember once I said to a therapist, I actually challenged her, and she just went, "Oh, this is all projection." She just couldn't handle ever being questioned or anything. But had I been honest and said, I'm not really sure that it was only my ego. In fact, I'm really kind of shocked that you are putting it down to one thing. What's that about for you? Was that what it was about for you? The fact that I was unwilling to put that out was my ego. And then going, show me where I'm wrong. Make me a better argument. Like, had I done that at the meeting, that racism meeting, I was abandoning everything I knew about dialogue, everything I knew about thinking process, everything I knew about, it was against everything that would be my strength. You have to give up your strengths. When you're giving up your strengths, like I was working with someone one time.
So then this goes into the question, what message do you recall receiving that shut down your discernment? So what message were you receiving at that meeting or that therapist that would shut down your discernment?
When you are vulnerable and you don't have enough, and I'm going to call it ego strength, to be okay because of abuse and vulnerability or the mob, to be able to go, no, yeah, this is a no. I think I need to stop, because there's so much shame about ever quitting a therapist. You keep or quitting a church. It's like, it's the voice of shame. So I would say it's the voice of shame that is not. It's the critical part. It's not God's voice.
So it's your own shaming voice, or the fear of other
voices
people's
that have
shaming?
that you've internalized because it came at you your whole life.
So it's you projecting the world shame onto yourself is the reason why you shut down your discernment. Is it? Would you say?
Projecting the world.
So right, you were internalizing the world's shame that isn't even there yet.
They're shaming. Oh no, it's the shaming. It's the shaming look. It's the shaming look. And because I didn't have the ability to work with my anger skillfully, anytime I felt anger because someone was treating me poorly, I didn't know what to do with it. I suppressed it because I could have gone, whoa, my whoa button just going off here. Something's weird here. I mean, that takes something that hadn't been healed in me enough. Right? In some ways, my development was so delayed because of the abuse. But that's for a lot of people. They are still struggling with boundaries, at my age.
So when you tell yourself something that shuts you down, do you recognize that message didn't originate from you and to question it? Right? Would you say that that's like the shame didn't even originate from you?
Yeah, I mean,
you weren't questioning it?
Right, because I didn't know. I had, that's what we're going to get into today. But it's like when you are been told that you need fixing your whole life, that you cannot trust your internal compass, that you cannot trust your deepest truth, and you have to split from it every single day of your life, like anything, like something is unacceptable, but divorce is not an option. Or you just need to be working more on yourself. Like everything is the split from your deepest truth. Or you're in the evangelical church and you're just like going, I cannot believe the way that guy just talks to his wife, but he's a leader. And you can't ever live in your truth. You are living so outside of your integrity and in your body. Am I making sense?
Yeah, very much so, very much so. And I'm just trying to organize a statement of how someone could apply this to their life if they feel like they are shutting down their own discernment and feel like, yeah, maybe they do hear this voice. How do they really get the strength and courage to start speaking that truth?
Hopefully this Infinity Loop podcast, but it's coming home to yourself. It is coming home to the great love affair of finding that it's the inner stillness that finds that place in the quiet and journaling and
Living out loud. You cannot hold on to the clenched fear and anger of who you think you are, and at the same time open your arms wide to experience all that you are. James Finley.
This ties in very much with discernment because this. Were you going to say something?
Well, I was going to say, if you internalize your discernment and never live it out loud, what's the value of it, right? This is kind of like, the discernment comes up, but if you shut it down, it's not serving you in your life. And this is to have the courage to speak your truth. Speak your truth.
Someone who has known me intimately for years commented to me, I feel closer to you in some ways reading these chapters on discernment, how I share my journey, the paradoxes and contradictions which flow into the transformational process are powerful for him. He encouraged me by saying, I see my journey reflected in yours. I'll keep doing this then, living out loud, naked and unashamed. The late Franciscan priest Brennan Manning said we should be professional lovers, that good at loving people. One way I love people is by showing my warts, my patched up places, my struggles, and the way I got through, so others feel more safe and okay in this world. So often we feel shame. This is who I am, warts and all. I stand before you naked and unashamed. But I can't do that safely if I'm afraid of your reaction. I do it better for my true self that's so abundant, your rejection of me won't affect me. I'm probably going to agree with whatever flaw you see. After my awareness of the consequences of my flaw and express sorrow over hurt it caused, my response will be, isn't it wonderful? We're all endlessly loved and lovable in all of our flaws. Thomas Merton, the great contemplative of the 20th century, was transparent and shared his journey intimately with his readers. Merton revealed his agonies and ecstasies and his contradictions that he would go out with. He taught the contemplative way by living out loud. As I was beginning this journey of writing, I had an experience of being a jeweled elephant in a trance dance. A trance dance is where they blindfold you, and you are moving to this beautiful music, but all your other senses become more alive. And I had just really incredible experiences because I think I'm also so visual, see so many visions, the infinity loop came from these trance dances.
Well, and what I think of the jeweled elephant is Ganesha.
Someone who was with me in the experience said, a jeweled elephant can't hide. My days of hiding are over. I am Ganesha, the masculine, the feminine, the balance. The jeweled elephant is the alpha woman. People who share that vulnerably without the PR version are who I trust. They're also who I find most interesting. Today, let us taste the freedom of living out loud, naked and unashamed. May it be an offering to our fellow travelers. They too will see that they're loved and lovable in all their imperfections.
Beautiful. What is your greatest fear that may be holding you back from living out loud? I think
Shame.
shame again, but shame from others, right? It's the fear of others' judgments because I held others' perspective of me higher than I held my own perspective of myself. Yeah. That would definitely be what was holding me back for a while.
Well, it was interesting. We were listening to this podcast of someone who's basically completely fearless because of everything that's come against him. He realized, I'm fine. And that's what I would say about me. I have been called the worst imaginable things, from a witch to the child of a devil to the devil to Satan to, the most. And I realized oh, those were all gifts. Because I'm like, if I can handle being called the devil and I'm still okay with it, and just look and go, oh, that was their pain. That was their fear. That was what they were under. And I don't judge them at all. That was just the paradigm they were under. I'm like, you can't really do or say anything. I don't think there's anything anyone could ever say about me, think about me, write about me that would ever touch what's already been done. So it's just like, I'm not afraid. So.
Yeah, I mean, when you step into your truer self, you have nothing to fear because everything you are is not a projection. It's.
Yeah.
Is there anything in your current life or past that keeps you from being more transparent? I mean, I think this is something we all need to always be working on. I know for myself, I'm just always trying to share my story as a tool to help others. So I'm never really looking to hide it. I'm always looking to bring more information to the surface. Yeah. And I think that's what we're doing here by practicing this, living what we preach. Yeah. In what ways do you overcompensate for your shame?
Okay, mine would be I would split from my truth and take on someone else's truth instead of standing in my own. That would be the Ralph Waldo Emerson quote.
And that would be how you would be the jeweled elephant in your own life.
Is you just stepping out, yeah. Being okay to be seen, man. Wow.
Being okay to be criticized. I think that's more important than being seen because the reality is if you're doing anything worthwhile, someone's going to criticize you. And I think we too often are afraid of the criticism and instead of realizing that it either holds no weight and doesn't puncture you or holds a lot of weight and you should take it in to be a better version of yourself, right? And so there's so often we're so afraid of criticism where really that should be what we are almost searching for the most because that's how we become our best version of ourselves. By not allowing the criticism to break us down, but build us up.
Right. And that's the secure self. They can go, yeah, you're right, I do that. Yep, that's an area I need to grow in. Yep, that's a good point. Yeah. And that's the part that narcissists can't do.
Right.
It's so threatening. It's so threatening. They internalize everything as shame. Yeah.
I am not a mistake. To believe we need someone to fix us is one of the most dangerous beliefs there is. Mentoring isn't shaming, bullying, or criticizing. Mentoring is empowering, developing, and loving. Mentoring is love. Chris DeVos.
And I would say, I really have a problem with people who use the term should. You should do this. Or just start telling you how you should have handled the conversation and what you should have said and this and that, and just control. Remember we talked about the quote, the moment you seek to control, you seek to love. And I couldn't remember the priest that said it, but it was Henry Nouwen, the late Henry Nouwen.
I'm sorry, so you're saying instead of whenever you seek to control, choose to love?
You cease to love.
Oh, cease. Okay. Because
I'm sorry, I may have said choose.
Yeah.
I meant when you see, the moment you seek to control, you cease to love. And you can see this when people get parental, when they get controlling, when they get dominating. They are not in love, and they can call that.
I think that's beautiful. You can't be in love when you are being in control.
When you, yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean you're not there's a time to go, I'm in control here. And,
there's a time to be a parent and pick your kid up from running into the street. Yes.
Yeah, you're not doing that. But this controlling, these are the boundaries. This is here's the door if you don't like that. You can't work here if you're going to do that. But it's this controlling. Anytime I see that, and I'm just thinking about somebody else I know who just, they want to help, But it's more than that. It's where their ego, and that all led to me believing I was a mistake. Hearing that message, that constant needing to be corrected from what size bowl I'm cooking, my food in, to every way I walk and everything I did. And that's what my necessary nemesis was about, he was such a controlling cult leader, which they, what's his name? Grannon? I'm forgetting his name. Richard Grannon. He wrote this book called The Cult of One, which I have not read, but it's basically about the narcissists. They're like cult leaders. And he would like, you are not getting up until I tell you can get up from this coaching session. Like everything was about controlling what words I said. And then he would call that like coaching and refining. And oh my God, I see this again with doctors that are going to tell you what they think the latest thing with your diet or what you should do medically. Like it's just this controlling, egocentric way that we operate in society, which is just so not okay. It's so parental. Where it's right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just keep hearing that quote you just said about once you seek to control, you cease to love. And I just really think that's
good.
important.
Yeah,
because very often the abusive parent that's exactly what they're saying. They're saying, my control is just because I love you. The inability to allow someone to develop their own human being, again, comes from this place of control, which is absent of love. And
the DOW, the Adolescent Opportunity Program that develops adolescents, is a very different way of parenting, of where a dialogic way of inquiry of developing people that is the opposite of control. It's leading in a very intelligent, learning, responsible way.
Well, I would say what we're trying to do when developing kids is to make them into the most healthy, productive human being possible, where I see so much of parenting is like just keeping them alive and projecting my own goals onto them as we're going to pretty much vicariously live through them, instead of this empowerment of how do I make you the best individual you can be. There's a lot of this, well, these are my values, let me project them onto you.
And how fear is seen as the opposite of love. And it really, if we drop down to so much of our reactions and stuff, we have a deep fear of our own unresolved. What is the deep fear that is causing us to need to control another human being? And our own abandonment from ourselves and our own ego hit that we are needing to get. This is me living out loud, showing you some of my warts and all. I wrote the following song, I'm Not a Mistake, right after I got with Leo in 2001. We met almost 20 years prior. The moment I saw Leo walk across the street in spring of '82, I said to myself, I was just 16 at the time, he's just like me. That proved to be true in dozens of delightful ways. The love I felt for him made me believe, to a great degree, I wasn't a mistake. The mirroring I received from him healed me in many ways, but I wasn't all the way healed. I still did believe I was a mistake, and I needed to be shown how to behave, how to think, how to feel. I needed to be tamed. There was still toxic shame in there. I let the man who I left Leo for tell me that I, quote unquote, needed to be refined. He criticized me relentlessly. I needed just the opposite. I needed to be more fully me. I needed to dance under the water wheel. The great love affair hadn't happened yet, even though I had experienced God's love for me. If it had, this book would have been very different. Much of what's in this book I already knew, but I couldn't stand in it. Everything I worked so damn hard to heal from wasn't heal. All my shit was still there. The estrangement from myself was enormous. I pretended it wasn't so. My great fall was because of believing I was a mistake. I already had great compassion by my side, and I still fell. All the reasons I was pulled in, all the patterns from what I got when I got in the cult 32 and a half years prior were still there. Once you get pulled in, the exposure to an abuser's pathology does a number on our brains, and we lose our way. My fall also happened because I took the ego's route in my attempt to heal my wound by thinking I could prove I wasn't a mistake. I took matters in my own unconscious hands by creating a redo. This time I was going to do everything right at my wise age to keep this man from abusing me. Not only was I going to not make mistakes, I was going to show I wasn't a mistake. By being so loving and long-suffering, I would be the one to heal his heart and soul. These are aspects of my wound that mystically merged with what ultimately became my liberation. Does that make sense what I did? Like I was going to create a redo, and this time I'm going to do everything right. I'm mature now. I'm old enough. I can put myself in another situation and I can create a different outcome.
Right. It's like you have an argument going on in your head that you know exactly how it's going to go. So you put yourself in a bad scenario because you have this inflated view of the situation because you've been going over it in your head over and over again that thinks you can just master the situation because you've been overthinking it, not realizing that every situation is unique and different. And we are, when exposed to people that know how to pick at our wounds, are going to be more taken advantage of than we could have ever played out in our head.
Yeah. Like this is where it comes back to the very first part of this podcast today was, we do things for a myriad of reasons. And one of the reasons that I have subjected myself to some of this has been the beautiful part of me that wants to ego dissolve, that wants to become more like love, that wants to become more refined so that they're of better service in the world. I mean, that's part of it. And
the ego thinking that you could just love them into changing, right?
Totally. So
right? I'm so evolved that all his abuse won't get to me, and my pure love of him will somehow change him from the abuser that he is.
I am more convinced today than I have ever been before that there are certain pathologies that are just. I can't reach them. I can't reach them. And I don't even think, I don't think psychedelics can reach them. I heard Jamie Wheel say this. It's like, you don't want sociopaths taking psilocybin where they get more
tools to manipulate.
More access to their parts of the brain. It's like, I think it makes them worse. I think that just like they say, therapy can make a sociopath worse. They just like learn new tricks, And I think that to think that you can heal someone's wounds when they are living in such a fantasy.
Well, yeah. Everyone has to heal their own wounds. Everyone has their own baggage. And yes, we can be a helping hand, but we only can help that hand when they reach it out as well. So this idea that we're going to just shower them with love and that's going to change them is not, because their hand is not out for us to lift them up.
Yeah. I would be the one to heal his heart and soul. These are aspects of my wound that mystically merged with what ultimately became my liberation. My wound drove me to meet my soul and follow her compass to the land flowing with milk and honey. Mercy took what was my compulsion, a redo, and bounced me into a wholeness and strength that would never seek a redo again. I don't think that's true. I have sought a redo again, but it's been different. It's been different. Yeah. It's looked different.
We're always learning.
We keep doing the work, falling down and getting back up. I will be humbled by this last one for the rest of my days. I would say that the damage that was done from that old relationship was so unbelievably enormous. and I healed from it, but just an enormous amount of abuse. I would say this redo now, I feel nothing that I've been through. I feel nothing. I actually feel more in my true self, in love. So it's different. We keep doing the work, falling down and getting back up. I will be humbled. Okay. My desire is to give my life away to others in a way that will serve them, that they may learn from my mistakes, and that none of us are mistakes. I have deep and reverent compassion for myself and others and for our brokenness. We're beautiful in our brokenness. That's how love sees us. And that is enough. That is enough. The transformational process from the Great Fall also turned me into the strongest person I know. I discovered I'm Wonder Woman. I just wasn't conscious of it. Now, let's go change the world. Oh, okay, hang on, let me check. Okay. Too many years, so many tears to get to this place. The long and jagged road I've traveled on, too long. The sharp tongues that crept out and gashed my heart open. Oh, brother, where art thou? It was my brothers all along, those to hurt me, but you to heal me. I needed to be shown how to behave, how to think, feel, and they said, but don't feel so deeply. Don't be so wild, so passionate, so free. You need to be more like me. Before you, I believed the day I was made was not his best day, that he made a mistake, and I needed everyone to set it right. I was trying to learn the rules of the game. I thought I would be safe in their huddle of love. But I'm not a mistake. The reflection I see being with you makes me believe he didn't make a mistake by making me. So now I'm free, I'm wild, I feel, I think, I behave not like them, but like me. I've got the joy and the peace. I'm not a mistake, but they made the mistake by trying to tame me.
Very beautiful, Mama. What patterns do you need to focus on to change? So I would say, what patterns did you focus on that helped you change so much?
Well, Richard Rohr is great about talking about the divine gaze and how we mirror one another. And that's what it was about, is Leo gave me some mirroring that said, because we had similarities in our temperament, that said, you're beautiful and delightful and wonderful the way you are. And he wasn't projecting his self-hatred on me. And so I would say it's about getting the mirroring from God and one another. And that's why, in relationships, it's both we're able to honor, I can take care of myself. I have a infinite self. I am love. And we vulnerably share our parts of us that are not fully healed and integrated and go, I need mirroring here. I need your love to heal me. So I think it has to do, again, with finding our tribe and good mirroring. I remember Rohr, who said some of his chaplain work he did being in prisons, and he would see these men and go, they didn't get good mirroring, And so that's so much about numinous love and the divine gaze and the having infinity loop eyes, being
the mirror for others.
Being the mirror for others, how we look upon them without that disgust. Like, we can feel aversion, we can honor our aversion and not see them with this disgust. It's almost the flinging of the hands, but it's looking upon everyone in their humanity and divinity, and then looking upon. That's what I tried to give people, which I do give people, is to feel so seen in the divine gaze, to see their beauty and have compassion.
And so it says here how you feel feel the sweetness and safety of being humbled by your great fall, how would you encourage others to feel the sweetness and safety when they're feeling humbled by their trauma?
Well, humbled is different than shame. And humbled doesn't mean like you could, be too much where you're groveling, but the humility that's just the grounded and childlike, that's in touch with its red pouch, that goes, I am aware of my capacity for self-deception. And when you have that, that's again back to that Socratic thing, is like to learn, you have to realize you like know nothing. Like
Well,
you're
it's
a
like,
new learner.
So I am not a mistake. I am perfect. And also I make mistakes and am not perfect. All in one, right? Is that, would you
The
say that?
perfection and the imperfection, the paradoxical.
And having that balanced dance.
And having that dance. So I would say is when you embrace it, when you are not attached to seeing yourself in your idealized self, which is the ego. I need to be perfect. I need to be okay. You're over-identifying with, it's levels of spiritual development. It's stages. And when you get to that stage when you can go, this is who I am, warts it all, because you have experienced the divine gaze. You have experienced God's love for you in all of your perfection and imperfection, that you realize it doesn't matter, because all that matters is that we are loved. That is when we experience, and that's imprinted on us, then we can go, I can own all my shit. It doesn't name me. So then it's like that humbling is something that makes me feel very connected to the rest of the world, because other people have done the very thing that I have done.
To me, the humbling just makes me want to go back to the mirroring and the divine gaze, right? To not think that I am better than anyone else at any given time, but understand I am on my journey trying to do my best and help others do their best at the same time.
Yeah.
And with that being said, we'll come to the end, and hopefully this mirroring and divine gaze helps you through your life and helps others. And please, again, remember to share, like, and we'll keep bringing this message to you all that have the ears to hear. Have a wonderful rest of your day.